Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name is David Holliday. I'm the Vice President of the National Student Exchange. I'm also the NSE Coordinator at the University of Minnesota Twin Cities. I should note that I had invited my financial aid colleague, Kathy Schuster, to join me today, but something came up last minute, actually, so she was not able to join. I see a lot of NSE coordinators here, names and faces I recognize. There's a few new, different people in here too. Maybe we have other financial aid folks here from our member campuses. You're all welcome. Thank you so much for being here. As I said earlier, this will be recorded and shared out after the fact, so if you have to step out, or if you want to share this with a colleague, the recording will be available either later today or tomorrow. So today we're going to be talking about the NSE financial aid process. This is a really critical process, I think, for coordinators, NSE coordinators and campus staff to understand. But also, this is important information to share with our students that are thinking about NSE. One of the barriers, I think, perceived barriers for students in doing NSE, and it's similar to study abroad, is the concern that it's going to be too expensive, that my financial aid may not apply, and things like that. And so we want really there to be clarity on this topic. For NSE, we do keep track of student demographics. 70 in 2024, so this last academic year, 77.17% of NSE students indicate they receive financial aid. So a very high percentage of our students are receiving financial aid to go to college. And of course, they rely on this financial aid and will hope that it is available through NSE too. Breaking that down a little bit further, 48% are Pell eligible. We're going to talk specifically about U.S. federal financial aid here on the next slide, but that's a key indicator of a financial need for our students. And then a little bit further, 53% of our students are first gen. And so they may or may not be Pell eligible, may or may not be financial aid eligible, but they especially need some extra assistance from NSE coordinators and staff on campus to help demystify the financial aid process. So first of all, federal financial aid guidelines. This is really important to be sharing with your financial aid staff on campus. The U.S. Department of Federal Education guidelines are listed here. These are also in the NSE handbook. And this indicates that students that are doing NSE should be eligible for financial aid because they should be remain enrolled at their home institution, and the NSE membership constitutes a consortium agreement between all NSE member campuses. So no separate consortium agreements should be necessary for NSE participants. NSE students are eligible for federal financial aid with the exception of college work study. That is the one federal financial aid program currently that does not apply for NSE. And federal financial aid should be available regardless of tuition payment plan, home pay or host pay. I'll talk more about that here in a bit. So it's important that you outline your campus process and clarify this with campus staff and also with students. So a key part of financial aid is called satisfactory academic progress. Students need to be earning enough credits and passing enough courses in order to remain eligible for financial aid. This is called SAP. So it is an important process for NSE coordinators to ensure that the NSE coursework they take, the credits they earn, are applicable to students' degree requirements. That is a requirement of SAP, and so that is a process of NSE. And actually, I talked about that in last month's webinar, documenting course approvals. Consulting with your financial aid office is key to gain basic understanding of how financial aid works on your campus. These are some questions to ask. How does financial aid apply to NSE? Whether you're on home pay or host pay, there may be slight differences there. Does state aid and or scholarships apply? And how about outside scholarships? That's a great question. When do students adjust their COA, their cost of attendance? I'll be talking more about this in a couple of slides. How many credits should students take? NSE does require students to be enrolled full-time. That's typically 12 credits at their host institution. When does disbursement occur? Is early disbursement available? I'm going to talk about disbursement here in a bit. And then who should NSE students contact to verify aid, revise cost of attendance, and ask other questions? So I really encourage all of you to have a key contact in the financial aid office. Some of you probably maybe have small financial aid offices. There may be just one or two people that work there. On my campus, University of Minnesota, we have dozens of people. So I've established a relationship with one key person that really understands the ins and outs of NSE, and I refer every single student to that person. That's a very helpful relationship to build if you don't have that yet. So advising students on tuition. So we're going to talk about tuition and fees and things like that, and then how financial aid may apply. So first of all, you're able to help students determine the tuition amount that they will pay on NSE. Now, most NSE campuses do operate under both payment plans, home pay and host pay. So when you're looking at a campus profile, you'll actually see information about both payment plans. Home pay is actually the most common option for students. Most students elect to go on home pay whenever possible. That means they continue to pay their home campus tuition. No tuition or fees are paid to the host campus. So that's pretty clear. It's the same as if they stay at their home institution. But if a student chooses to go on host pay, they will be paying the resident rate tuition to the host campus. No tuition or fees are paid to the home campus, hence the names home pay and host pay. The tuition amount is listed, the estimated tuition amount is listed on each campus profile. So you can show a student exactly what they would be paying if they went to that school on host pay. So clarifying costs is a key thing to do with students. The next related costs on the same tab, and this is a screenshot from a campus profile. Hopefully some of you recognize this. Towards the bottom of the profiles, you'll see these little bubbles. So we're looking at the tuition and finances tab right now. On that tab, you'll also see miscellaneous fees. Some schools will have additional fees that are either mandatory or optional. So we try to be very transparent with any of these extra fees that NSE students may incur if they go to that particular school. Of course, for all campuses, students may have course fees, materials for classes, their books. Those are their responsibility at that host institution as well. The next larger expense a student needs to be prepared for is room and meals. Now, sometimes students will live off campus if they go on exchange. So every campus profile does have some basic information. The approximate monthly cost for off-campus housing is listed here. Helps a student budget. Also comes into play for that cost of attendance that we'll talk about soon. And then you'll also see information, or at least an estimate, for on-campus housing. So most NSE students elect to live on campus when they go on exchange. So you'll see the estimated rate for on-campus housing, including meal plans. Some campuses have a flat rate that includes the meal plans. So explaining these costs is important. A big process that students need to work with regarding it with their financial aid office is calculating the COA. That stands for cost of attendance. And so all of those numbers that we looked at previously can actually be accessed on the tuition and finances tab of each campus profile. Right at the very top, you'll see campus budget. So if you click that hyperlink, it actually takes you to this page that shows all of those numbers on one place. So you do see a breakdown for tuition and fees if for students that are doing host pay. Of course, home pay is the same as their home campus tuition. That estimate for room and meals, some of those other costs and miscellaneous fees are broken down here as well. But you'll also see a link at the very top. This is a link to the cost of attendance. This is the official financial aid page or the cost of attendance page of that particular campus. So I know my colleague Kathy really likes to go directly to this link to pull the official cost of attendance numbers from that campus website. That's where she'll pull tuition for host pay students, an estimate for room and meals, either on campus or off campus, and some of these other expenses. And the cost of attendance is what the student's financial aid package is actually based upon. So once a student has worked with the financial aid office to revise that cost of attendance, then it's important to talk about financial aid disbursement. So again, the home institution will be dispersing financial aid to NSE students, whether they're on home pay or host pay. So a key question is, when is financial aid dispersed? Since the host campus billing calendar, when they want to be paid for room and board or other fees or tuition if the student's on host pay, oftentimes that billing calendar may not align with the disbursement date of that home institution. We've heard from some campuses where financial aid disbursement doesn't happen until a couple of weeks or even a month into the term. Well, that may not work if that host campus wants the money for room and board, especially billed earlier. So students can ask if early disbursement is possible. Some campuses can disperse students' financial aid early based on when they have to pay bills at their host institution. There are some campuses that cannot do early disbursement, though, and mine is one of those. So in that case, my students ask for a proof of aid letter from my financial aid office. That proof of aid letter includes the amount of aid the student will be receiving and the disbursement date as well. That letter is sent to that host institution, to the NSE coordinator, who probably has to give it to the bursar's office to verify that, yes, the student will be receiving money on this particular date. And almost always that should allow for a payment deadline extension to be granted. Um, Students do sometimes have to pay bills up front if that deadline extension is not possible, but we do ask campuses to work together and grant those deadlines whenever possible. So financial aid is dispersed to the student. Another key question is to ask, how is the financial aid dispersed? Have your students set up direct deposit. I think most of our financial aid offices probably have direct deposit as an option. Encourage students to do that because that will speed up the process in getting the funds to the particular student, as opposed to mailing a check to their home address or something like that. So encourage students to set up direct deposit to receive those funds as quickly as possible. So the student is going away on exchange. They're negotiating all of this, figuring out disbursement and things like that. They are on exchange. The next key process that is required and built within the NSE protocol is to do enrollment verification. So, of course, in order for students to be eligible for financial aid, they have to be enrolled for the appropriate number of credits. And that's easily tracked at the home institution because, the registration website is linked with the financial aid and billing website, and so everything is interfaced together. Well, with NSE, financial aid is being processed at the home institution. That process doesn't interface with that host school when it comes to registration, add drop windows, things like that. So the host campus has to verify NSE student enrollment. This happens typically on or after the census date. That's the end of your add drop window, typically 2 to 3 weeks into the start of the term. The host campus is responsible for verifying the student status and the credit total. To do that, you go to your incoming student roster and you'll see this check mark that is labeled verify, and you click that check mark and you verify that hopefully the student is attending. But if they're not attending, you can note that they were a no-show, that they withdrew, whatever the options may be. You'll also have to verify the number of credits that student is taking. We also ask that you verify their address, their local address and email address and things like that. But the student status and the number of credits they're taking is what's critical. The home campus will receive an email of that enrollment verification. It goes directly to the home coordinator. That verification is also available on the outgoing student roster by clicking that check mark, the verify check mark. But for many of us, we receive that email notification that is for a particular student. That email can be forwarded to your financial aid office. So if they need to see proof of credit, proof of enrollment, forwarding that email to the financial aid office often does the trick. On my campus, I actually just have a spreadsheet, a Google Sheet that I share with my financial aid office to update or verify any changes on the credit total. And so that kind of closes the loop that the aid was dispersed, or hopefully it's been dispersed by then. You know that the student is attending, they're taking the appropriate number of credits. Then the post-exchange process is the next thing to be aware of. The student responsibility at the end of their exchange. First of all, they have to ensure there are no unpaid bills at the host campus. They need to leave that campus in good standing, pay their bills. They also need to request an official transcript once their grades are posted. I think there are a couple of campuses out here that that can automatically send transcripts on the student's behalf, but many of us cannot. Students have to request it themselves. So make sure that is indicated to the student. They need to have a transcript sent back. Um, as far as where that transcript goes, that varies from campus to campus. On my school, I actually received the official transcript because I have some updating of student records and things that I need to do, and then I forwarded that on to my admissions office where they actually process those transfer credits. So at the home institution, our main responsibility is to apply those NSE credits to degree requirements. This should have been agreed upon before the student left on exchange. So once the transcript comes in, you see the courses they earned, the grades, the credits. Those should be applied to those degree requirements. And then we also need to close out that NSE registration. Every school is going to have a different process. I have a placeholder registration course that I simply zero out the number of credits. We don't want students to earn double the amount of credits. So once those transfer credits come in, the placeholder credits are removed. And so developing a process to ensure the student took the appropriate number of credits, they earned the appropriate grades in order for their financial aid to be, audited or to actually be um, excuse me, I'm blanking on the word that I'm thinking, to verify that they received the appropriate aid at the beginning of the term. I don't want to go into the weeds a little bit. Sometimes there are issues with students not earning the number of credits or not requesting the transcript at the end of the exchange. That can actually result in that financial aid being recalled from the student. I had that situation go on one time with a student a few years ago. Uh, and it ended not very well for the student. They had to repay that financial aid that they had received. So that doesn't happen for 99% of our students. That is the end of my presentation here. I know it was quick and I talked about a lot of different things. Hopefully, most of this is familiar to all of you, but we do have some time here to talk. Do you have questions about anything that I've presented on? I'm going to stop my screen share. Um, Anything that you've been having problems with on your campus that you'd like to talk through? Uh, how can I help you? Oh, yes. Okay. I didn't get into those weeds either. Dan talked about quarter schools. So, Dan, thanks for throwing me a curveball. We have about, I think we're at 4 or 5 NSE campuses that are on the quarter system. So, of course, that affects two different things with regard to this topic. Number one is the credit conversion. So I think it's fairly standard for credits from a quarter school to be applied to be transferred to a semester school at 1.5 value. So 15 credits at Western Washington University, a quarter school, actually transfers back to the University of Minnesota at as 10 credits, so 1.5 value. So as a semester school, I have to make sure the student is taking the appropriate number of credits at that quarter school in order to actually be eligible for their financial aid. So something to be aware of, something to talk closely with your registrar, verify that credit conversion, that 1.5 conversion, and ensure the student is taking the right number of credits. So when I send a student to a quarter school, I either recommend they go for 3 quarters, fall, winter, spring quarter, because if they take 15 credits each quarter, that converts to 30 quarter credits, that converts to 20 semester credits. And that would be 15, 30, 45. No, that'd be 30 semester credits. So for that academic year. So that would mean they're full time on a semester calendar. Financial aid would be dispersed properly. But if they take too few of credits, if they go just for fall quarter and only earn 10 semester credits, they may in fact not be eligible for federal financial aid or to be a reduced amount. Does that make sense regarding credit conversion? The other thing, of course, that could be affected there as well is disbursement calendars and billing calendars because you're looking at 3 quarters versus 2 semesters. So ensuring that the disbursement dates for financial aid are made known and sometimes negotiated if the host campus is requiring payment when disbursement has not happened yet. Hopefully, I explained all of that off the cuff well enough. So yeah, we're actually at one, two, three, four, five quarter schools. Um, Carrie asks, why would a student choose host pay versus home pay? Well, oftentimes that's so I talked about most of our schools operate on host and home pay. So you do need to help students understand which plan may work best for them. We do have a 25% of our schools or so that are home pay only. That means that's the only option to send or receive students. We also have a handful. I think we have 2 host pay only campuses that are only sending and or receiving students on host pay. So understanding where you're at, which plans your campus offers. So, Carrie, if you do actually offer both payment plans, helping a student decide home pay versus host pay is really critical, both so they really know what the costs are of their exchange. And oftentimes that decision is going to come down to campus availability. We have some campuses that are part of NSE that are very restricted on the number of home pay students that they can take in. These would be called limited or very limited campuses, and this is indicated on the campus profiles. Whereas some of these schools are actually open on host pay. That means they're able and willing to accept any and all applicants on host pay. So, in order to give your student access to certain campuses or certain programs like the Wild Rockies Institute or some of the special programs that are offered through our schools, host pay may be the only option. I hope that helps in short. We can certainly talk offline if anyone has more questions about that too. Um, Jessica says, yes, that's right. I think we knew that. Cal Poly, this is the last year they'll be on quarters. Um, yeah, Dan says spring semester does not work well because students will have 2 quarters worth of credits to record. Deborah, are you trying to speak? You're on mute.
Does work well. You said does not.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I added a not. Does work, and I was going to say that doesn't sound right. Yes, I talked with a student this morning that is considered Western Washington for spring 2026 for your winter and spring quarters, and I made that point that you would be going to this particular campus. You'd be going there for winter quarter and spring quarter. If you took 15 credits each quarter, you would earn 20 semester credits. So you actually come out ahead as far as the credit total comes. But yes, Jessica points out, but on host pay, they're having to pay double tuition. That is exactly right. Deborah put in or I'm sorry, Leah put in a prompt there, reminder about the NSE conference, which will be in Minneapolis in October. I'm very excited to host. Okay. Any other questions about the process? What's important for all of you is for you to have a basic understanding of financial aid. I know just enough on my campus to be a little bit dangerous, but of course, I can make no promises regarding financial aid. I parrot messages that I get from my financial aid office, or my friend Kathy Schuster. Um, and on my campus, my quote is almost all financial aid goes with NSE students, whether they're on home pay or host pay, because my campus actually does disperse institutional scholarships, state grants, even on host pay. So understanding those processes for your own campus, being able to articulate those to students, but of course, always refer students to your financial aid office to receive that official message or to actually confirm financial aid eligibility, disbursement amount, disbursement dates, etc.
David, Marge Collins from SDSU. I have a
Yep.
quick question. And so you mentioned course placeholders based off of credits. So at SDSU, when students select home pay, and let's for an example, going to Hilo, Hawaii, uh, we put 15 credits as their placeholder. Is that typical? Because then students get confused when they're only taking 12 credits, let's say at Hawaii, they're paying extra, and then we refund them back at the end of the school year once their transcript is received here. Is that how most campuses do it? Or is that us or
Yeah, well, we could survey the group here. So on my campus, my placeholder courses are actually variable credits. So I register the student in the placeholder for the number of credits that they tell me they're taking. So it could be
okay.
12 or 13 or 15, and so I set that amount. So that could be something that you could explore. Um,
I think so I tried when I first started, I tried working with the records office on it in financial aid and the cashiers. Their fear was that students would go below the 12. Does that, I mean, have you run into that at all?
so NSE requirements are that
Right.
students have to be enrolled full
Yeah.
time,
So
and then
after that, sorry, so I think their fear is like the add drop date's so different at other institutions, and so they're just worried about all of a sudden students, for whatever reason, going below,
yeah,
maybe. I don't know.
yeah, that's so. Uh, no, that's a great question, and you also have to explain to students like you're
Yeah,
responsible for understanding that how the number of credits you're taking will affect financial aid, uh,
right.
and so make sure that's incorporated as part of your orientation for your outgoing
Mhm.
students. So I think a lot of people are here saying their placeholder courses are set at 12,
Okay,
because that is full time, that's minimum. So that could be something that you explore. And other people are saying, and it's the same at my campus, we actually have a flat tuition rate. Anything between 12 and 18 is the same for tuition. So there's not a matter of
okay,
billing students or refunding students if they're taking a different number of credits.
okay.
So a couple of ideas there to consider. Um, so yeah, thanks everybody for weighing in
Yeah,
on that.
thank you.
And Marge, feel free to reach out if you need our assistance to talk that through.
Okay, thank you.
Um, yeah, and going below 12 would be caught by the verification process. Um, you know, um, because typically if a student goes through the census date and then they drop, usually they'll be receiving a W at that point, or there might be a short window in time where they're able to withdraw and not have a W, but that W may, you know, usually doesn't impact financial aid, but verify that with your financial aid office. Yes, Eileen.
So Marge, I don't know if your campus has, so for UAA, our add drop deadline happens before our payment deadline, and students are no longer able to change their credits after that point. And so usually I check and make sure that it's I send a reminder, make sure that your credits match what you're taking down there. But it also gives me a chance to say, okay, yeah, you are at least in 12 credits for the placeholder before that payment deadline. And if there are any changes within that point, our bursar's office, charges them appropriately for that. Um, so kind of how on looking at it on the home campus, how I make sure that the students are getting charged and then, of course, when the verification process comes through, sometimes it is a little bit different. Um, but I try to give the very stern warning of this could affect your financial aid if you are not putting the right information in. And, it could cause problems with the bursar's office later. So we haven't had any issues of people putting in, less than 12 at least.
Perfect. Thank
Yeah, thank you for the good discussion on this. The financial aid folks, I think some of you are here, remaining in compliance is, of course, critical. And so having a solid process and solid written instructions is important. Um, and for many of us, we have forms that students sign when they're applying or when they're participating in programs like this that document a lot of these items. And I go through it during my orientation with outgoing students as well. And so make sure students receive this information in multiple forms, multiple ways, and hopefully it sticks. Let's see. I saw a message in here. Tierra, I think. Um, and we should follow up on this. All the Minnesota schools should be talking about this. So no, the North Star Promise does not disperse on host pay. That is the one exception for Minnesota-based aid. But the Minnesota State Grant does. The North Star Promise does not disperse on host pay. I know, very sad. Yes, and for all of you, understanding the nuance, especially of state aid and institutional scholarships, is important. On my campus, we mirror what has been done with our study abroad programs in that all aid, including scholarship money from the university, outside scholarships, and the Minnesota State Grant, do apply to students, whether they're on home pay, paying U of M tuition, or otherwise, third-party providers or host pay. So that's very generous to our students, which is great and something to advocate for if at all possible on your campuses. But we do understand some states will have restrictions on state aid or scholarship money leaving campus on host pay. Okay, I'm over time here. I have no place to go, so we can keep chatting here, but I'm actually going to stop the recording